you know,
we wanted to have enough time. We have 15 minutes left, Councilman Brown. These two gentlemen just took a total of 15 minutes.
I just want to say that, just for the record, that I don't think the history lesson has already been presented.
And this is a discussion of my proposal.
It's not right.
Well,
Debate.
all right. No conversation, please, on the outside of the
God bless
committee.
you too, my brother.
Yes.
That's all right.
Mr. Lee Miller, he has a couple of people understanding these things. You have about 15 minutes.
Yes, I would like to address the professor here.
You want to make a motion to move it down without recommendation from the committee?
Okay, I want to make sure I make that
He
motion.
doesn't have to have a
We'll make sure, because he's not going to discuss mine, so I don't think. And council members, just want to make sure we do it the right way.
Well, you don't know what he's going to, I don't know what he's going to say. So. But we're going to allow him equal time, Mr. Miller?
Yes, thank you. Certainly should have equal time. I want to address the professor from some of his comments. I too am a member of those associations, also the Society of Civil War Historians. Got 2 master's degrees, and I don't want to have a professionalism debate here, but suitably qualified. Addressing the first thing on Nathan Bedford Forrest and his slave trade, he was only in the slave trade for a couple of years. That was just a part of business back in those days, 150, 175 years ago. A lot of our famous Americans owned slaves back then. Forrest was known as a very humane slave trader. He never split families. He allowed his slaves for sale to go out and seek their own master and come back. Had perfect freedom to do that. And in fact, after he got out of the slave trade in 1859, 2 years before the war even started. So he was only in it for a short time, but was known as a very humane businessman as far as that goes. Second issue on Fort Pillow. Have you ever been to Fort Pillow? Ah, well, perhaps you should go. Maybe you should read up on Fort Pillow. There was a investigation of it afterwards, and it was labeled as pure Northern propaganda. Abraham Lincoln even admitted that it was contrived and ordered a military investigation headed by General William T. Sherman, who was no friend of the South, of course. And General Sherman's military investigation completely exonerated General Forrest at Fort Pillow. In fact, his conclusions, as noted in Sherman's memoirs, was that the Union disaster at Fort Pillow was entirely due to the Union bungling. Fort Pillow was not a black mark against Forrest, except in the minds of Union propagandists. As far as the Ku Klux Klan afterwards, General Forrest was, of course, not one of the founders, did not get involved in it until a year and a half after it existed, and it was in the congressional record. There was a congressional investigation about the history of Ku Klux Klan, and the congressional investigation also completely exonerated General Forrest, saying there was no evidence that he was even a member of the Klan, ever rode with them, or ever directed them. And one of the precepts of the Ku Klux Klan, if you do any research, says that it was for the protection of black and white members together in society. All you have to do is just read history of the Ku Klux, and you'll see it was started as a social organization, but expanded to restore law and order to the South. No one could vote back then. Blacks couldn't vote, women couldn't vote, ex-Confederates couldn't vote. It was ruled by tyranny with carpetbaggers and military law. Yes, the Klan took things into its own hands later and became violent, but General Forrest, with his influence and respect throughout the South, ordered that the Klan be disbanded in 1869, and it was. Never to be heard from again. The 2 following Klans that came up in the early 1900s and the 1950s, those were the terrorist organizations that we are faced with today. They're completely different from the Klan of the 1860s. That's all I've got to say. But I would like to, Mr. Boyd, I think you want to introduce one of our other guests? Or?
You would.
Certainly will. I'd like to call on Mr. H.K. Edgerton here. He's a former president of the NAACP, the North Carolina NAACP. Thank you, sir.
Terry, could you bring this on? Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I have prepared a statement, and I'd like to take that statement home. If I can. A little more comprehensive. shall be passed and these are approved. The members of the committee and I. All right, I do apologize if I don't.
She'll help you right there.
Please do.
Thanks, brother.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, since all these folks, I have prepared a statement, I'll read that statement. But I want to tell everybody who I am also. I am H.K. Edgerton. I am the immediate past president of the NAACP in the city of Asheville.
Please move your conversation outside. Let's give everyone the same respect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am the immediate past president of the NAACP in the city of Asheville, its first vice president. I am also the past representative of District 50 for the Black Leadership Caucus. I am also the co-founder of the Black Student Senate, University of Minnesota. I am also was its chairman of its board. And I have other accolades I don't want to talk about, but that's not what I'm here for. And I'll read my prepared statement, sir. Mr. Chairman, honored members of this committee, and those present, I have placed before you to peruse a copy of the historic March Across Dixie Pictorial Journal. It is a very important vehicle that is at the forefront of breaking down the walls of persona non grata. That means being personally unacceptable or unwelcome of the Confederate battle flag, and that of the honorable beings who stitched it together, carried it into battle, shrouded the bodies of their loved, and who placed it atop the buildings that governed those who deeply believed in giving love to their fellow man, as was proven when one of the Almighty God's ultimate test was thrust upon them, the economic institution of Southern slavery. General Nathan Bedford Forrest was one of those honorable beings, and unquestionably, by his actions, a friend to the African of his time, be they freed or indentured. There are many black folks here in Memphis who owe their very existence to the kind general who answered a knock at his door from a plea of an African whose wife had just been sold to cover his master's debts. And the general found himself in the South, buying back a slave that he would never use, just to bring peace to a kindly soul. A man that had his hot horse shot from under him many times in battle, was never a threat, because he knew that one of those 40-plus black men who went off to war with him had his back when he hit the ground. And as the shirt reads, this shirt, and I'll pass it down, better Confederates did not live. There are those like commercial appeal reporter Wendy C. Thomas who write calumny, false and malicious accusations about the general, with the intent of exciting from the public a level of hate that is a danger to public safety. The United States Congress exonerated General Nathan Bedford Forrest at their Klan tribunal of any crimes associated with the Klan or Fort Pillow. And I have never heard mentioned one time the terror heaped upon the citizens of Tennessee and the South by the Union League, be they red, yellow, black, white, or brown, or that it was the Klan during the time of Forrest that broke the back of Reconstruction in the South. 12 years of terror for all Southerners, with the exception of the scalawags who climbed into bed with the carpetbaggers and the northern appointed military governors and their tribunals that stole and raped and murdered all the way to the bank. And never to forget, in closing, the North planned to divide Southern whites and Southern blacks from each other, starting first with the teaching of the Almighty God by Southern ministers like the Honorable R.L. Dabney from Prince Edward County, Virginia, who spelled out in his famous letter to the head of the so-called Freedmen Bureau in September of 1865 all the things that the South had done to try and do right by the African people held in bondage, and all the things that the Yankees should do and stop doing to a hapless people, vagrancy laws and entrapment to the company store, to name a few. Now that they had all, now that they had all the money and natural resources fully in command. Even Dr. Martin Luther King could not be persuaded to attack the Southern Cross of those who fought and served under it, sons of former slaves, sons of former slave owners, and far too many that were neither. I am the immediate past president of the Asheville branch of the NAACP. And at no time do I recall that David Duke or any leader of the Ku Klux Klan in being invited by that organization, or for that matter, the Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of Confederate Veterans or the President of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, invited to give the keynote speech at their national convention. However, here was the Pole Bearers of Memphis, Tennessee, a forefront organization like the NAACP, inviting the general to do just that. The first and only white man to be given that high honor. It makes no difference that a woman that hates as Mrs. White does have her read that accounting that sums up who General Forrest truly was. A monument is defined as a lasting reminder in remembrance of a person or event, and it is the duty of those who follow to see that this mandate is protected. Political correctness and the lies and distortions of those who hate are no excuse to do otherwise. As much as I deplore the likes of Lincoln and his son having a monument of their likeness at the Tredegar Iron Works in Virginia, or on the Capitol Mall in Washington, I cannot dig the war criminal up, or that of President Grant, who owned slaves as he entered the White House, as the lies ran forward to the world that his Commander-in-Chief Lincoln had him fight a war to end the economic institution of slavery. Good help was hard to find, was his excuse. We here in the South need to embrace our history and heroes of the past while searching out truths not told by those who took a criminal road of total warfare upon the defenseless men, women, and children. Thank you for having me. And I hope that you will take a path that can lead to a better community and will earn the respect of many across this land who call themselves Southern, and the many of the North who believe in a sense of fair play. I thank you, sir. I would entertain any questions, but I do want to say just one quick thing. I admire you bringing these professors here, so-called professors here. This is the same thing that took place around here in the Southland of America with the establishment of a public school system in 1865. Northern schools, teachers sent here to the Southland of America to do any and all kinds of things they could do to divide and separate black folks and white folks in the Southland of America. And they have done a mighty fine job. And on that committee that you talk about having, if the sons of Confederate veterans or the daughters of the United Confederacy are not there, or some of us who love the South, who look like me, it's a farce. And I don't like the hate that I see in this room today. It's despicable.